This is Actualize Freedom, straight talk on growing clicks and conversions on Amazon FBA from people doing it every day. Now here's your host, digital marketing acrobat, Danny Kenji Carlson.
What's up, guys? Danny Carlson here with the Actualize Freedom podcast. And today we have on a repeat guest, but he has recently sold his business and moved on to a completely different business that solves a different problem. And this is a problem that I guarantee that a lot of you listening have this problem, or if you don't yet, you're going to have this problem. And it's having good financial information to actually run your business. And Nathan Hirsch is our guest today, and he has a really interesting way of solving this problem. And they just launched a new business and they're doing very well with it in a very short amount of time. So clearly there's a big need for people solving this problem. So I'd like to welcome to the podcast, Mr. Nathan Hirsch from Ecom Balance. How you doing, Nathan?
Doing great. Always good to talk to you, Danny.
Excellent. Maybe just start us out by telling us about what happened during the sale of your old business and then why you're getting into this new business.
Yeah. So, I mean, the short version is I was a big Amazon seller from 2008 to 2015, and I had scaled that business using VAs and freelancers. And as Amazon became more competitive, we started leasing out the VAs and freelancers to other e-commerce sellers, which became the Free Up marketplace. And we ended up launching Free Up in 2016. We grew that for 4 years, and we ended up getting acquired by one of our customers at the end of 2019, right before the pandemic, which was kind of crazy. And kind of going through that acquisition process, bookkeeping was extremely important. We had immaculate books going back 4 years. We really knew our numbers. We knew what was going on with client percentages and fees and profit margin and all that stuff, which really helped. And I think the original plan was to travel the world like you right after selling the company, but the pandemic hit and we were stuck inside, and we ended up launching an info product called Outsource School, which was great because it bought us time to really figure out how we get back into the e-commerce space. So we still run Outsource School very passively. It's a course that teaches our hiring processes, but we really love the bookkeeping space. We like helping entrepreneurs understand their numbers. And yeah, getting funding or investments or selling your company is great. And being less stressed during tax season is also great. But the real reason that we were able to have success with bookkeeping is that we got accurate books every single month, and we're able to make decisions every month based on what the numbers and what the trends were telling us. And we got the numbers in a way that we could understand. My business partner and I are not bookkeepers. We're entrepreneurs. We're e-commerce sellers. And we were able to take that information, make hiring decisions, make sales and marketing decisions. And that's really what it's all about. So hopefully with Ecom Balance, we're able to help e-commerce sellers do that same thing month over month.
Yeah, and that's one reason I'm really excited to have you on here is just because you are an entrepreneur, you're not the bookkeeper or the accountant. We have had accountants on here before, and to be honest, those episodes are a little bit dry, I think, for most people, because myself included, and probably most of the listeners here, don't like numbers, right? Numbers give me headaches, and spreadsheets can be fun sometimes, but most of the time I'm staring at financial reports and trying to figure stuff out. I don't like doing that. I need to look at these spreadsheets or these reports that my bookkeeper gives to me, and I need to look at it for the shortest amount of time I need to make a good business decision. And that's it, right? That's all right. I want to do. So that's one reason I think it's good to have you on here talking about this stuff. So I think a good place to start is maybe talk about how e-commerce books are more complicated than your regular books, because this is a trap that a lot of people fall into. It's very easy to hire a bookkeeper that doesn't understand the e-commerce books, and they can make a huge mess. And it's also, if you're trying to do it yourself and you don't know what you're doing, you can totally screw things up because it is more complicated, right?
Yeah. So the two main things are the marketplaces and connecting them to QuickBooks. I can't tell you how many sellers will take the money that's deposited in their bank account and have that be the top line on their income statement, when really the top line is your sales. And then there's all these fees, refunds, storage costs, whatever it is that Amazon and other places are charging you. And that gets you to your net. So that's the biggest mistake. If you have a bookkeeper that's taking the money that's deposited in your bank account and that's the top line of your income statement, they're probably not understanding e-commerce. And with that, you need something to connect the marketplaces to QuickBooks or Xero, which is the two bookkeeping softwares I recommend. For whatever reason, Amazon and Shopify and all these places have not figured out a great way to connect to QuickBooks and display accurate data and accurate fees. So we spent a good 90 days at the beginning of Ecom Balance testing all the different connection softwares out there before learning that A2X had by far the most accurate data, the least amount of bugs, the best customer support. So we use A2X to connect from the marketplaces to QuickBooks. And that's kind of your basic setup, deciding between QuickBooks and Xero and using A2X and making sure you have a bookkeeper that understands the different marketplaces and the fees and how that top line looks. The other side of it is the cost of goods and the inventory. And really a big piece of that is doing accrual books instead of cash basis. So the short version is cash basis. Whenever you charge your card or you get money, that's what appears on your income statement. Accrual, it's when you actually agree to the transaction. So if you're on net 90 terms or you buy a bunch of inventory right now and you don't sell it for the next 3 months, or you sell it over the next 3 months, it's going to show every month instead of just showing as a $50,000 inventory purchase in that first month. Because if you think about it, if you show a huge inventory purchase in January is probably going to show a loss or not much profit. And then February, March, and April are going to show pretty big profits because you didn't buy any inventory those months. But what does that really tell you? That doesn't help you make any decisions on your business. And it's also not going to help you get the best multiple when you sell your business. So finding a bookkeeper that understands that top line and that cost of goods and inventory piece, those are the two things to focus on.
Yeah, and especially the last thing you mentioned there, it's so important to really understand, are you being profitable? And the only way to do that is to do that accrual, just because there's such a big lag time, like you said, between when you're actually ordering that inventory to the time you're getting that Amazon payout is, it can be months, right? And then across your financial statements, it's going to be impossible to actually see if you're profitable if you're not doing accrual, right? I've seen financial statements that are cash-based accounting in those kind of situations, and it's just terrible information, and it can lead to bad decision making. Just think about that for a second. If you thought you lost money in January, you're freaking out, you're going to cut a bunch of costs down through the next couple months, but then you start making a ton of money in February and March, then you think you're up, you're doing super good, and it's time to invest in like 3 new products because you just made so much money. But the reality is you had a pretty modest profit for all of the months, and you shouldn't be adjusting your spending down or up for either of those months, right? Has that kind of been your experience with the behaviors that some of this stuff can help with?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's other businesses where cash basis makes perfect sense. Like, I don't know your agency, but with FreeUp, we could do cash basis because we charge clients every week. There was no net terms. We would pay the freelancers within that week, and cash basis was completely fine because there wasn't really any kind of accrual need, and it didn't affect the multiple or anything like that. But for most e-commerce businesses, because you're dealing with inventory and these different platforms and sometimes different terms depending on your vendors, accrual makes a lot more sense. And all the brokers know this as well. I think, Joe Valley from Quiet Light, he talks about this all the time in his book, Exitpreneur, that the way you get the highest multiple is by doing accrual basis. And also to have clean books, we're able to deduct things like conferences, because the buyer of your business doesn't necessarily have to go to the conferences that you go to. So if you spent $20,000 a year on conferences and your multiple is 5, you could actually take that 20, multiply it by 5, get an extra $100,000 in your sale. So things like that, along with being accrual basis, is how you get that multiple if you ever want to sell your business.
Yeah, and you're also kind of selling yourself short if you're not accounting for all the Amazon fees and the payment processing fees and all that stuff too, right? If you're just taking your payments in from Stripe, in from Amazon, and not accounting for all that other stuff, it's going to make your overall revenue just lower, which is a vanity metric. But hey, vanity metrics are good if you want to ever sell your business one day, or in a lot of other situations, or just actually correctly reporting your taxes and financial statements and things like that,
Right.
right?
That's the big key right there is you can't accurately report it if you don't have those fees in there.
Yeah, and so, what are some other mistakes that you commonly see? You guys have worked with, since launch. You only launched, I think, a month or two ago, right? And you're already working with 50 different businesses. So, like, what are some of the common mistakes you've seen amongst these new businesses you've been working with in the e-com space?
Yeah, so let's kind of start at the beginning. So my overall mentality is that entrepreneurs should never be doing their own bookkeeping for two reasons. One, it's not a very good use of your time. As you know, as an entrepreneur, you should be focused on sales, marketing, expansion, growing your business. And second of all, most entrepreneurs are not good at bookkeeping and they just have to pay to get the books cleaned up down the line. And cleaning up books usually costs way more than just doing the books correctly from day one. So that's my overall mentality. From there, there's three pieces of the financial puzzle. A CPA, assuming you're located in the US. If you're outside the US, it's called something different, but someone to file your taxes. You should have a CPA already. If you don't have one, reach out to me. I can refer mine. I don't get any referral money or anything, but I've used him for 10 years. But you need someone that knows taxes, that can make sure your taxes are filed on time. A lot of entrepreneurs have to pay estimated taxes. You need a tax person that's on top of everything. Then is the bookkeeper. And you want to have a separate person doing your books than your CPA for a few reasons. So CPAs, first of all, get busy at different times of the year during tax season, during certain estimated tax times, and it's very difficult for them to stay on time. You want to have a monthly system where the month ends and within 10, 15 days, you get the reports in a way that you can understand, and then you can make decisions on those reports. You don't want to sometimes get the reports on the 5th and sometimes skip a month and sometimes get them on the 25th. You want an automatic system in place. On top of that, they end up being more expensive than bookkeepers. And on top of that, most CPAs are doing the books in a way to file taxes, which doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong. It can be correct from a tax side, but not be in a way that's good for decision making, that actually helps you make decisions every single month. So there's a lot of benefit for breaking up the CPA and the bookkeeper. And you kind of can have them work together and get two brains working on the finances of your business. And the last part, which usually comes into play once you get over a few $1,000,000, is some kind of part-time or full-time CFO that can do a little bit more planning, financial forecasting, figuring out when to buy inventory and how to maximize your percentages. So the ideal large business has that 3-person team, and the ideal small business has that 2-person team of a tax person and a bookkeeper. So from there, it's figuring out your software, which we kind of already talked about. You figuring out QuickBooks or Xero, and then that connector piece, which I recommended A2X. And then the last piece is making sure you have that meeting on your calendar every single month around the 15th with your business partner, with your team leader, your husband, your wife, whoever it is, where you're reviewing the numbers. You're sitting down and you're going through income statement, balance sheet, cash flow. We've been running this meeting for 7+ years. It's a game changer because you're going to compare margins to last month and the same month last year. You're going to see that your expenses or your payroll is going up faster than your sales. You're going to be able to see what's really going on in your business and make those decisions. And if you go to Ecom Balance, you can actually get our agenda that we run every single month. And that's really the goal. You don't need to be doing the books every single month, but you do have to have that meeting on your calendar and go through it and know your numbers. So that's kind of the overall setup that I think a lot of entrepreneurs get wrong.
Yeah, and one reason I really believe in the business that you guys are doing is I think it's a very common situation for entrepreneurs to get paired up with a bookkeeper. And that bookkeeper doesn't really understand what the entrepreneur needs to see. And the entrepreneur themselves don't even really understand what they need to be looking at. Like, what report should I look at? Like, should I be checking this? Because it's so complicated. And then even if the chart of accounts is set up incorrectly, maybe the chart of accounts is set up for a different type of business and the bookkeeper just doesn't really know any better, then you're not going to be able to get that good quality information. Like, one example, I only started doing this maybe 6 months or a year ago, and it's really stupid that I didn't start doing it before, but I look now about every 2 weeks, I'll get my bookkeeper to send me a profit and loss detail report. And essentially that's just every single transaction going through the entire business, just sorted out into each account. And it takes me 2 minutes just to scan over everything. And quite often I'll find some charge on there that's like, hey, what the heck is this? This is a software we stopped using months ago. Okay, great. I can just cancel that. And in the past, I've been burned. It's definitely cost thousands of dollars just letting expenses go on for months longer than they're even being used and stuff like that. So that's just one example. But have you seen that be a problem? Just the people are not even have the right chart of accounts set up, or they don't even know what to look at?
Yeah, the chart of accounts is huge. We have Shelly, who's our controller, does a great job with that and making sure that it is in a way that clients can understand, because sometimes you'll have too many charts of accounts where your income statement is 7 pages long, and other times a chart of accounts isn't broken down enough and all the expenses are put together, and then you have to kind of dig through to see what's going up and what's going down. So that's extremely important. You kind of hit the nail on the head on different reports that you can do on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. My advice is get that good monthly system down where you're reviewing your numbers every month, your bookkeeper's on time, you're happy with everything. And from there, you can see, hey, every month we're going through this, but it would be really great if we had these KPIs or these numbers every week or every Monday or every 2 weeks, and you could start adding stuff to your monthly reports. But it gets chaotic when you're just getting reports thrown at you every single week with no rhyme or reason. So my advice is get that monthly setup going from day one. And then from there, you can add stuff. And lastly, we did a ton of market research on just the bookkeeping industry, specifically for e-commerce. And we did a blog on the Ecom Balance blog about our findings. And a lot of what you said is true. A lot of bookkeepers struggle with e-commerce, or at the same time, they struggle just speaking entrepreneurship and putting data in a way that entrepreneurs can understand. And a lot of times these bookkeeping businesses are run by bookkeepers who aren't necessarily great at processes or hiring or scaling, or they're able to start off strong, but as they get bigger, things get a little bit more chaotic and they're not able to put those right systems in place. So obviously we need to execute, and we're still in the early stages, but on paper, that's why we feel our strengths are hiring and processes. And that's what's going to allow us to grow a great bookkeeping business.
Yeah, because I've certainly been on the other end of that where we hired a bookkeeping company where the owner was great. They knew what they were talking about, and we got on some calls and they were great. But unfortunately, the bookkeeper that we got paired up with on their team wasn't so great. And it didn't really seem like they were on top of the training and management aspect so much, because they're bookkeepers, right? Their brains probably work a lot differently than people like you and I, who never were the technical founders in our businesses. So if you were to say, like, if someone were just starting out, they're not familiar with these financial reports and things like that, what would be like the top core reports that they really need to be looking at? And then should they expand upon that based on what they want to see, or what is kind of the process for an entrepreneur look like?
Yeah. So I know this is unpopular and entrepreneurs hate their finances, but learning how to read an income statement, a balance sheet, and a cash flow is incredibly important. At the very least, learn how to read an income statement. That's kind of the bare minimum, where you're able to understand what's going on in your business, what your margins are, what you're making, what your expenses are. And then for certain businesses like e-commerce, the balance sheet and cash flow can become more important. It also helps you in other parts of life, whether you're investing in the stock market or investing in private companies or whatever, just being able to understand that the health of a business. But I would start with the income statement. Make sure that you understand what each line item is in that chart of accounts, and make sure that you're tracking your business that way. And you can always add in the balance sheet and the cash flow as you go. Cash flow is great, but there are certain entrepreneurs that can see what money's going to their bank account and stuff like that. But cash can be king, especially if you're running some kind of seasonal business where you're having really peak seasons and really slow seasons. We have a client who has us project out cash 16 weeks in advance at all times, because their summers are very slow and they don't want to fire everyone every summer and start over. They want to be able to pay their people through the summer until they get to a bigger time. So some other things to factor in there, but start off with the income statement and go from there.
Yeah, and just from my personal experience, I would say it can be quite overwhelming when you start looking at these financial reports, but it does get easier, right? Like Nathan said, stare at it until you start to understand what's going on a little bit. Sometimes I like to just open up a Google Sheet as well, and I'll just play with the numbers a little bit in the Google Sheet and just, maybe pull some different date ranges and compare. But I think for me, it really was a matter of just staring at reports until I understood what was happening in the business. It's very overwhelming to have this huge chart of accounts, all these different accounts, and what does this mean? What the heck's a liability and all these things? But eventually you stare at it long enough, you start to understand it. Do you have any better advice than that, or is that pretty much what you got to do?
No, great advice. If you're doing that meeting every single month, like we talked about, and you maybe grab our financial agenda, then you're going to get better at it every single month. The other thing that we can do is you can grab sample financial statements for e-commerce and non-e-commerce business. We have some at Ecom Balance. I'm sure you can Google them and find them online. And just being able to look at other people's businesses will be able to help you understand yours and see maybe things that are missing or things that your bookkeeper can do better. So that's where I would start. Google's also your best friend. You come up with something like liabilities, Google it, and you'll get a much better idea of what it is. And that'll put your business in perspective a lot more.
And let's talk a little bit about the big one that I know a lot of people struggle with, which is cash flow management. Maybe talk a little bit about an entrepreneur's workflow if they want to launch a new product in the next month or so here, and they need to figure out, okay, am I going to be able to safely make this inventory purchase just based on whatever data that I have here? What report should they be looking at?
Yeah, a lot of times with that, you're looking at cash flow, but you're also trying to project out like 16 weeks in advance, or that's usually kind of the standard, that between 12 and 16 weeks. My biggest tip there is you want to overestimate. You want to assume things are going to be more expensive, things are going to take longer, things are going to not go as planned. I think that's what the best entrepreneurs do. They're very conservative in their estimates. So you want to look at how much cash your business is making right now. So, hey, this month I'll estimate to make this compared on what the same month was last year, and the next month is the same thing. And it's going to take me X amount of time to get this product to Amazon to actually be able to sell it and start generating cash again. So that's really what you're planning. How much is it going to cost you up front? What is my starting cash point? What is my cash coming in over the next few months, maybe on existing products, or maybe you don't have any cash coming in? And then what are your expenses each month? Who's going to be on payroll? What VAs are you hiring? What software are you paying for, et cetera, to be able to do the math and figure out, hey, I'm going to run out of cash at this point, or, hey, every single month I've got that $20,000 cushion or whatever it is. I know a lot of people use like the profit first method. I personally don't use it. I think it's great for people that struggle to take money out of their business or struggle to pay taxes and hold on to money for taxes. But I think there's a lot more efficient ways to run a business than to have like 6 different bank accounts that you're constantly transferring money for. But that's my personal opinion.
I also agree with you there. I actually tried getting that set up for my business at one point, the profit first method, and it has some downsides, right? It creates a heck of a lot of accounts, and you have a ton of different bank accounts open too, and like your books are going to be a lot messier because of so many different bank accounts. And it's not as simple as it sounds. And at the end of the day, you can achieve all the same things just by working with a good bookkeeper, which you're going to need anyways to have accurate taxes. I think maybe Profit First can be great for a really simple solopreneur business. If they really don't want to hire a bookkeeper, maybe that's a great option. But I would also recommend not to use the Profit First just based on my own personal experience with it.
Yeah. And the other thing I'll add there is simpler is better. And obviously I'm biased because I run a bookkeeping business, but it's in your best interest to make it easy for your bookkeepers. That means as few accounts as possible. That means using bank accounts that allow view-only access, which not only makes it faster for your bookkeepers, but also makes it so that you don't have to send them statements every single month, and it leads to less work on your end. Using business accounts instead of personal accounts. And a lot of people, well, obviously you shouldn't mix business and personal, but some people have a personal account for personal and a personal account for business, and they're just running their business out of a personal account, which legally is fine. For bookkeepers, it creates chaos because we can't get view-only access to that, and you just have to download statements every month. So as you work with your bookkeeper, it's okay to switch your accounts to better banks, stuff like Amex, Bank of America, Mercury, opposed to places like Capital One, which still to this day, like don't give you only access very easily, which kind of blows my mind. And stuff like that, a lot of entrepreneurs don't think of. But for me, simpler has always been better, and it's going to make it cheaper for you paying bookkeepers and also value your time a lot more.
Yeah, I really think a lot of the big banks are going to get disrupted by some of these other startups like Wise and Revolut and these, that understand the frustrations of the old banking system and actually have easy ways of accessing things, easy ways of paying people in different countries and everything. Like a few of the banks that we use are in that category of not having view-only access for accountants, and it's super annoying. We have to either hook it up to some weird software that will like take the statements from the email and then forward it into like a drive folder, or we have to someone has to go in there and download it themselves because you can only give them full access to the bank account where they can drain all the money or or nothing. So it's ridiculous, right? Of course, and it's a business account. Like, how is that not a problem that they've solved by now, right?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And just like your bookkeeper should only have view-only access. We don't even allow clients to give us full access. We don't want it. And there's other things too, like to keep your account safe. Like you should own your own QuickBooks account, your own Xero account. We have clients all the time who submit for pricing, and then they realize that their bookkeeper or their CPA owns their QuickBooks account, which can cause all sorts of nightmares. So there's just a little bit of planning that goes involved to figure out a good bookkeeping system. And if you're using a bank that doesn't allow view-only access, it's going to be worth the time times 10 to just switch to a better bank rather than having to send statements every single month indefinitely.
Yeah, well, absolutely. But Nathan, other than that, is there anything that you think I missed when it comes to bookkeeping for these e-commerce businesses?
No, focus on understanding the numbers of your business. Focus on hiring a good, reliable bookkeeper that's on time, that gets you statements that you can understand, and focus less on understanding the nuances of this is how you reconcile things in QuickBooks or taking a course on how to use Xero. Most serious entrepreneurs are not doing that, but they do understand how to read numbers and how to make decisions based on trends. So appreciate you having me on. And if anyone's interested and they go to Ecom Balance to get a quote, 2 free months of bookkeeping are on me, and we're happy to talk to you if you have any questions.
Excellent. And I definitely recommend you do that if you are looking for help with the e-commerce book side of things, because so many people get caught up on this trying to do themselves. If you really know what you're doing, then go for it. But in all my years, I've only met one guy who ran an Amazon business and was able to do his own books and enjoyed it. He was a freak of nature. I met him at this, I used to put on an Amazon sellers meetup in Vancouver, and he was telling me his eyes would light up. He's like, yeah, like I just love it. Like nothing gets past me. Like I am super on those books. I am like a hawk. I'm like, all right, that's great that you love that so much. It's kind of weird, but go for it.
Yeah, and it's possible he's way more successful than you or I, but I would argue that his Amazon business would grow more if he was focused on things that weren't bookkeeping.
No, and I totally agree. And for me, it makes me want to pull my hair out. So give Nathan a call if you guys are looking for help with that. ecombalance.com?
Yep, ecombalance.com.
All right, awesome. And if people wanted to reach out to you personally, is there a best place to do that or follow you on social media?
Yeah, connect with me on any social media channel, Nathan Hirsch, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. You can schedule a call with me right now on the site if you're interested in that, and I'm pretty easy to contact.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on here. And guys, if you're looking for the show notes, I'll put all the links there mentioned in the show notes at kenjiroi.com/blog. And until next time, go out there, make some sales, and don't go out of business by making bad financial decisions.
For show notes and resources mentioned in this episode, visit kenjiroi.com.